Okay, so this next worksheet is factoring quadratics from the beginning. So the first thing that we want to do is that we want to complete our x just like we did in the intro to quadratics, except we have to fill in the top and the bottom. So the top of the x is going to be our a times our c. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to write out ax squared plus bx plus c. That way I can figure out what my a value and what my c value is. So in this case, our a value is 2, our c value is also 2. So we're going to multiply those together. So 2 times 2 is 4. And then our b value always goes on the bottom. So our b value in this case is going to be 5. So now we want two numbers that when we multiply them, we get 4, but when we add them, we get 5. So if you would happen to look back to the intro to quadratic worksheet, that's where we write out, we have the factors of 4, which one of those add to 5. So we could do 4 times 1, we could do 2 times 2, we could do -4 times -1, or -2 times -2. So which one of these factors add to give you 5? So in this case, it's going to be 4 and 1. So now we're going to use those numbers and we're going to replace the b with these two new numbers. So the 2x squared is going to stay, as well as the plus 2, our c value. But instead of having 5x in the middle, we're now going to have 4x and 1x. So plus 4x plus 1x. It does not matter which order that you write these in. If you write the 1x first and then the 4x, it's fine. You should get the same answer at the end. So now we're going to use our grouping skills like we did on the factoring quadratics grouping worksheet. If you want to refer back to that one, you can. So you're going to group the first two terms, group the second two terms. Looking at the first two terms, you got to find out what the greatest common factor is. So in this case, the greatest common factor is going to be 2x. Then you're going to divide both of these terms by the greatest common factor. So 2 divided by 2 is 1. X squared divided by x is going to be x. 4 divided by 2 is 2. X divided by x, it's just going to cancel out. So now looking at this one, we have 1x and 2. If you want to say they have nothing in common, that's not necessarily true. They actually have 1 in common. So now we got to figure out if this one should be a positive or a negative. To figure that out, we look at the sign in front of this one. So in the sign in front of this term is a positive. That means our greatest common factor also has to be a positive. So then divide 1x divided by 1 is just going to be x. 2 divided by 1 is just going to be 2. Check to make sure that your things in parentheses match. Since they do, you're good. You can keep going. So you're going to group your greatest common factors together. So in this case, it was 2x and 1. So 2x plus 1. And then put your remainders together, x plus 2. This is going to be your answer here. Okay, looking at, let's do number 5. So same thing, I like to write out that this is a x squared plus bx plus c. On the top of the x goes your a times your c. So in this case, it's going to be 2 times 20. So 2 times 20 is 40. And on the bottom of your x is your b value. So in this case, your b value is not only just 13, but it's going to be -13. So now we need the factors of 40. But when you add them, you get -13. So the ways that you can get 40 is by doing 40 and 1. You can do 20 and 2. You can do 10 and 4. You can do 8 and 5. Okay, or you can do negative things, because a negative and a negative is going to give you back that positive. So negative 40 times negative 1, negative 20 times negative 2, negative 10 times negative 4, negative 8 times negative 5. So trying to figure out which one of these add to give you negative 13, it's going to be the negative 8 and negative 5. So I'm going to replace my B value. So our B value was this negative 13 with my two new numbers. Again, it doesn't matter which order that you put them in, whichever way you want to do it. So 2x squared minus 8x minus 5x plus 20. So I rewrote this expression, but I exchanged the negative 13x for the negative 8x and the negative 5x. So grouping the first two and then the third and fourth terms together, finding the greatest common factor. So 2 and 8 is going to have 2 in common. X squared and x is going to have x in common. Divide, 2 divided by 2 is 1. X squared divided by x is x. Negative 8 divided by negative 8 divided by positive 2 is going to give you that negative 4. X divided by x is just going to cancel out. 5 and 20 have 5 in common. I need to figure out if this 5 should be a positive or negative, so I look back at this term. This term was a negative, so that means this greatest common factor also has to be a negative. So dividing, negative 5 divided by negative 5 is 1. I'm going to be left with just 1x. 20 divided by negative 5 is going to be negative 4. Check to make sure that your parentheses match. If they do, you're good to go. Group your greatest common factors together. So 2x and negative 5. And then the things that were in the parentheses are the remainders. X minus 4. That's going to be your final answer. Okay, let's do number 9. So number 9, same thing. Write out ax squared plus bx plus c. Top of the x is going to be a times c. So in this case, it's 2 and negative 6. So 2 times negative 6 is going to be negative 12. And then on the bottom goes my b term. So in this case, the b is the number in front of the x. So since there isn't a number in front of the x, we pretend that it's 1. So now we need the factors of negative 12 that add to give you 1. So I know that I can do negative 4 times 3, or I could do positive 4 times negative 3 because that 12 is a negative. I could also do positive 12 and negative 1, or negative 12 and positive 1. Can also do negative 6 and positive 2, or positive 6 and negative 2. So in this case, my answer is going to be 4 and negative 3 because they're the two that add to give me positive 1. So I'm going to rewrite this expression, except I'm going to replace 1x with now positive 4x and negative 3x. So 2x squared plus 4x minus 3x minus 6. Again, doesn't matter which order you write them in. You could have written the 3x first and then the 4x. You'll still get the same answer. So what does 2x and 4x have in common? They have that should be a 2x squared. They have a 2x in common. Dividing, I'm going to be left with x plus 2. What does 3x and 6 have in common? They have a 3. I need to determine if this should be a positive or negative. Looking back here, it should be a negative. So dividing, I get x plus 2. My parentheses match, so I'm going to have 2x minus 3 and x plus 2 is my final answer. Flipping to the back of the worksheet, I want to do number 18. So ax squared plus bx plus c. Automatically should notice that there are only 2 terms when our equation or expression usually is 3 terms. So what is missing here is the bx. So we're going to do the same thing though, a times c on the top. So in this case, our a is 9, our c is 4. Remember, c is always the value that does not have a variable. So in this case, it would be -4. So 9 times -4 is going to be -36. Our b goes on the bottom. So our b in this case is 0 because it's not there. So we need to find two numbers that when you multiply them, you get -36, but when you add them, you get 0. In this case, it's going to be -6 and 6. Whenever you have a 0 on the bottom, the two numbers on the side are going to match. But you need to make sure that these numbers multiply to give you the top. So replacing, we're going to have 9x squared and -4. These are going to go in between those two values. Even though bx wasn't there, we're going to put these there. So 6x plus 6x. Group the first two, group the second two. So 9x squared minus 6x, they have 3x in common. If you're not sure, you can always use Desmos. Again, it's GCF, parenthesis, and then type your two numbers with a comma in between. So 9 divided by 3 is 3. X squared divided by x is x. -6 divided by 3 is -2. X divided by x is going to cancel out. 6x and 4, what do they have in common is a 2. Need to determine if that 2 should be a positive or negative. Since this 6x is a positive, that means this is also going to be a positive. 6 divided by 2 is 3x. -4 divided by 2 is going to be -2. My parentheses match. So I'm going to put my greatest common factors together. So that's 3x plus 2. And then the remainders together, 3x minus 2. That's our final answer. If you have any other questions, please let me know. I hope this helps.